Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Well, what a pleasure and honor to be participating in a meeting here in Santa Clarita Valley. This used to be my home at one time, and it's good to see this convention happening. And it's just awesome. You know, I'm just real grateful to be an alcoholic. I was telling my sponsor I was thinking about something to say here, and I just started talking about gratitude. And my life is just filled with so much of it. And if you're new out there, this is probably going to make you want to throw up. But I've just never had it so good, you know, and I really, truly mean it. That wasn't the case when I got here. My story is my story. I'm going to share a little bit what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I really liked what it was like, and then what it's like now, but I was not too fond of what happened. And I started out drinking in high school not too far from here, just down the freeway a little ways in Southern California here in Costa Mesa. And I got invited to an upper class party, and it was a typical high school party. It had a keg in the center of the room, and it had the girls on the wall on the right and the guys on the wall on the left. And I walked in, and I floated over the keg, went back to my wall, and floated back to the keg, went back to my wall. By the third beer, I was the bartender. And I was pouring one for you and one for me. And I absolutely love the effect produced by alcohol. I don't know, growing up I had all these fears. You know, I had this fear of talking to girls. I was afraid of the big tough football players, and I was afraid of everything. You know, I was probably even, by that third beer, I wasn't afraid of nothing. You know, next thing you know, I'm running around chasing these girls, kissing them at the party. Those big tall football player guys are all my best friends now. And I just absolutely love this thing. And I was about to do that night what I was going to do for the next 15 years of my drinking. I fell down, I threw up, and I was thrown out. And I got to practice throwing up on the way home. And, you know, I remember I had to go to swim workout that next morning, and I'm doing the laps, you know, and I got like 2 lines in my lane, you know, and I'm doing these flip turns, feel like I'm going to throw up, and I'm just, God, get me out of this, and, you know, get me through this, and I'll never do this again type thing, you know. And I get out, and I take the shower. We're just getting dressed and just about ready to leave, and a couple guys come running up, and they said, "Hey, Tom, we saw you at the party last night. You were so funny. We're going to another one tonight. You want to come?" I said, "Sure." And I was to do that for 1,000 times, you know, in the next 15 years. I don't know about you guys, but it just did something for me and to me that's a little bit different than others. You know, I had a couple philosophies growing up, you know, and I thought either you make enough money to do whatever you want to do, or 2, you get paid to do whatever you want to do. And, you know, I've worked a lot of jobs, and I started off at 13 years old working in, you know, shining shoes. And then I'd be down on the beach on my days off, and, you know, all the girls are hanging around that lifeguard tower, and here he is combing his hair, you know, and they're bringing him lunch. And I'm like, now that's a job I want to get. You know, and I went down there, and I had been on the swim team, so I applied and got a job as a lifeguard. You know, and I'd be up snow skiing in the winters, you know, and I'd be skiing up there, and we'd ski up to the line. We're standing there in line, and some guy'd ski up to the front of the line with a little red cross on his back, say single, and some girl and him would hop in the chair, and they'd ride up there, and I'd still be back there in line. I'm going, now that's a job I want to get, you know, and I became a ski patrolman, and the instructors were making more money than I was, so I became an instructor. You got a little more one-on-one time, too. And I was standing at a bar I just snuck into down here one day, and some guy had quit or something like that, and the owner turned around and said, "You want a job?" I said, "Sure." And so they made me the bouncer. Lightest weight bouncer in the world. I was, I was 155 pounds soaking wet at that time, and I was 18, and I was making sure everybody was 21, you know, ID here. And I started working in there, and then I became a bartender that next year. And when I turned 21, we had a great party there, and the owner just nearly freaked. But Meantime, I'm going to school and doing all this other stuff, you know, and I don't know about you, but I just loved the party. I just loved everything, you know, but I got to tell you something. I got this disease that's progressive and terminal, and I went to Orange Coast College after high school and then up to USC, and I got into there, and it was fun. And I got to tell you, this is probably one of the first signs of alcoholism is I had developed this immense capacity to consume mass quantities of booze. And I just absolutely loved it. You know, I would go out and I could down a couple 12-packs or whatever else, you know, and these people are like had 3 beers. They're going, can you drive? Drive, I can race. Give me those. You know, let's go. You know, I'm ready to. You know, that's not like my brother and sister. I got sober, and I was sober a couple of years, and we go to this Thanksgiving party down at my sister's house, you know, and there's 8 of us in the family at this dinner, right? They open up 2 measly little bottles of wine for dinner for 8 people, and I'm the only one not drinking. And they save the corks, you know, and about halfway through dinner, nobody's finished the first glass, and I'm getting nervous now, you know, and I'm starting to look around. I'm watching everybody's drink, and I grabbed this bottle. My sister looked like she drank the most. I said, would you like a little more? And she said, no, thanks. I'm starting to feel it. I'm like, that's the point, you know. She goes, well, I don't like that sense of losing control. And I said, my God, if you're like me, that's the only time I felt in control in my life, you know. I don't know about you. I had this KF radio playing in my head all the time. You know, you're a loser. You're never going to amount to anything. Man, 3 shots of tequila just like turned on the wave, you know. Everything was cool. You know, and that's how I drank. And I remember going up to SC, and, you know, I joined this fraternity house, and we were going down the row and all this stuff. And they had these chugging contests. And I remember entering them all the time. And I could basically outdrink most of the front line at USC football team, you know, and I was like little and they were like big, you know. Nice little guy here, look at him, it just bam, I could just slam those beers down. And at that time, I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun and everything, but alcohol is progressive and terminal, and it really does distort your perception of life. You know, being a little more smarter, unique, and different than the rest of the people at school, especially the teachers, you know. I walked into this class in my final semester with less than 5 classes to go, and I looked at that professor. I'd had him the year before, and I just turned around and shut that door, man. I didn't need to put up with this stuff. And I turned around and walked away from school with less than a semester to graduate. And I remember when my dad was pissed. And anyway, I started bartending full-time, you know, a nice little thing there. And you know, people were saying stuff like, Tom, see the world, join the Navy. Not locked up on a boat with a bunch of guys for 9 months. I don't think so. You know, and a couple gals I was dating were flight attendants in the airline. I said, Tom, why don't you join the airlines? You'd have a lot of fun. A lot of fun? And they said, a lot of fun. Now, folks, this is back in 1976. This was the good old days. Back then, sex was safe, and marijuana and cocaine was non-habit forming. And my, how times changed. And I was getting paid to hop on this plane and fly around the country. It would be like me and 4 girls would hop on a plane. We'd fly around the country, you know, and then we'd dance the night away, you know. And you'd serve a few drinks and a few cocktails, you know, and a few meals, and then we'd get off and just and I knew the best discos coast. This is back in the good old, like I said, the disco days. This is back with John Travolta, the Bee Gees, Donna Summers, and The Last Chance for Romance. And we were getting paid to. I'm gonna look. You're looking at one of the original disco ducks, you know, and. Still got the platform shoes, I think, but it was a fun time. It was a magical time, and alcohol worked. The only problem, like I said, I got something that's progressive and terminal, and unbeknownst to me, you know, all of a sudden I'm going out to have a great time, and, you know, I don't want to stop because I'm having too much fun, and I got these 6 o'clock morning flights sometimes, you know, and you kind of overshoot the mark there, and if you like oversleep on that, that's not a good thing. And the airline, they take that real serious. It's not like regular jobs like now where I'm in construction, you know. Like if you go out and you party the night away, you get blasted or whatever, and the next morning you come to and you overshot the mark a little bit too much on getting up, and you're late, you run down to work, and you got your head down, and the boss yells at you, and you go to work, you know, and you're doing your head's exploding, but you make it through the day. Airline's different. You go up there, you party the night away, you show up to work, you're a couple hours late, your job's gone. They ain't waiting for you, you know, and then you got to explain things, you know, and what you do is you know, alcoholics are like water. We kind of seek our own level. So you kind of get this little niche of alcoholics that are partying together, and they're always covering for each other, you know, and they're calling each other, knocking on the door, wake you up and drag you down to the airport, you know, and then you slide an Al-Anon in there to really keep your betters really safe, you know. They hustle you all up, you know, and it's good, you know. And so everything seems to be going fine. But, you know, I got this thing in there. The problems keep getting worse, you know. And they had this neat little program at TWA where you could actually take a leave of absence for like 3 to 6 months, you know, in the winter when it was slower. And then you'd come back. And I kind of liked that idea, you know. So I'd leave New York, come back here, bartend, party around the beach for a few months, you know, and whatever. And then they'd call you back. And by that time, your supervisor's moved on to another domicile, and you got a new thing, and they look at the computer record of how many times he called in sick in the last 9 months. Not at all. He wasn't here. You know, so you get a whole new fresh start. And so I did a lot of that geographic stuff, and it wasn't unbeknownst to me in the time when I'm doing it, but I just thought, you know, hey, this is cool. Things are starting to heat up. Let's take off for a while, you know. And I would do that, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm traveling around and I'm having good times, but the problems start getting a little bit worse, you know, and things start changing, you know. And then I came up with a major problem in my life. I had a major crisis. My mom came down with terminal cancer. And at this time in my life, I ended up taking a leave of absence and came home here to Southern California. And I got a respectable job in sales with Motorola, and I was selling communication equipment and stuff, and I remember coming home, you know, and being with Mom and all that stuff, but the only problem is, you know, like I said, that alcohol, you know, we kind of seek our own level, and sure enough, I found the other guy at work. He was the trainer, the guy who was teaching us how to sell and stuff, and I discovered happy hour at this point, you know. We'd all get up and we'd go to happy hour, you know, after the day of training and stuff like that, and after a couple rounds or whatever, you know, most people get up and leave. And we get up and leave too, except for we go down to the next bar. You know, they would go home to their family and loved ones. And then finally about 10:30, 11 o'clock, he's getting up and he's going home to his wife, you know. And I would end up at these little dives around the corner. There's like Patrick's Pub on Costa Mesa on Harbor Boulevard, you know. You can smell a toilet a mile away, or the whole thing smelled like a toilet, you know. And we'd end up locking the doors at 2 o'clock and help clean up, you know, and drink till 4. And then I'd go back to work the next day and stuff. And what was really happening is what the psychologists like to call relief drinking or whatever. What I was doing, I was drinking myself into oblivion because I couldn't bear the fact of going home and watching my mom deteriorate in front of my eyes. You know, but before she passed away, we were able to spend a lot of close quality time together. And my mom and I sat down and we talked about the good times and we laughed about you know, we were able to cry about the sad times and stuff. And kind of got current, pretty much like an amends thing. You know, we just got current. And one of the things she said before she passed away is she said, "Tom, I want you to watch your drinking, and because you got alcoholism in your blood and you're showing all the signs." Not a couple of them, not just a few out there, but all the signs. See, I have an uncle I have 2 uncles that were alcoholics. One was a merchant marine and never had a sober breath in port, and another one was my other one. He left a wife and 8 kids and never seen again. And my grandfather had died of alcoholism, cirrhosis of the liver. They said, "Oh, thank God it wasn't alcoholism. It was just cirrhosis, you know." Yeah, and anyway, so after she passed away, I got to tell you, I was never more enabled in my life. Everywhere I went, poor guy lost his mom. They bought rounds of drinks for me, you know. Everywhere it was just that way. So I was pretty much in a state of oblivion for a long time. And I got to tell you, if you're going through something like that at this time, I want you to know that alcoholism does not revive the dead, and it certainly isn't a cure for cancer, especially in someone else, you know. And but what I did do at that time in my life is I started going through this phase that it doesn't even make the pain go away. What it does is it postpones it. You really have to go through that grief process. And if you're drinking out there, it's waiting for you to sober up, and then it's right there in your face. And then you end up drinking again, and it's back, you know, and it never does go away. And until you finally do really sober up, and you go through that process. But anyway, a long story short is I ended up going back to TWA, and I'm flying around and stuff, and the problems are getting worse. And I started to watch my drinking at this time. You know, in the beginning I was drinking to have fun, and then I'm going to have it, you know, with a few problems and stuff. And now I'm running around and I'm drinking, and I'm starting to watch it. You know, they said, you know, keep an eye on it. And I'm doing exactly what I said to do in the book. You know, I'm going in there and I'm having 3 or 4 vodkas with orange juice and then switching to orange juice so nobody could tell I'd quit drinking right in the evening. And all of a sudden I realized that whenever I was trying to control it, I wasn't having any fun. And whenever I was having fun, there was no control. You know, and I ended up getting more problems at work. And next thing you know, I'm getting called in there, and one of the supervisors is going, he's mumbling around, asking me some questions. He's like, you know, it's really hard to admit if you ever have a personal problem, if you're having a problem with, what, drinking? Guy goes, yeah. And I said, oh, I got a problem with that, you know. And I'm thinking every night time or something like that, I just really kind of get over the edge a little bit, too far out there. And He goes, oh, great. Well, you want to do something about it? I said, well, yeah, sure. And I'm thinking how to control it better. And I go in and I start talking to health service people, and they're coming up with this stuff, and they ask me questions. I answer the questions as honest as I could at the point. And she looks at this thing and says, my God, you're an alcoholic. I said, screw you. I just answered those questions. Aren't you reading that? And she said, well, there is this test. And it's similar, almost right out of the big book. You step in this bar, you have your choice of 2 or 3 drinks in a day. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not tough. And she said, and you get to pick your drink of choice, and mine was beer. And she goes, and you have to drink it every day. I said, I don't drink every day. She says, oh, well, try. Oh, okay. And so I'd pick 3 drinks, and she said, I thought you would do that. And I'm thinking Foster's, those great big, big cans of Foster's, and she's going, no, like 8, 12, 10-ounce things. And I go, oh, okay. So I'm doing this thing for a couple of weeks, and I'm having my 3 every day, just religiously. I'm doing my 3, And so a couple of weeks rolled by, and I go in there. I said, by the way, no problem. How long do you want me to do this? She said, a year. What? Oh, and here's the catch. You couldn't save them up and have them on Friday either. You didn't get no credit for a missed day. So I'm doing this, and we roll along a couple of things, and then I had another major crisis in my life. Jimmy Carter won the election, and I went into a blackout, and oh, man, so I guess I had this problem. And I ended up my first tune-up center. I was down here in Southern California at Chalk Towers, a children's hospital in Orange there, and I went through the first care unit. And it was kind of cool. I went through the thing, and I was one of the great students in there and whatever else. And I got to go to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I went to a company, and I just love the sobriety thing, and I'm going to meetings. I'm going down to the Newport Club and hanging out at Hoag Hospital on for Saturday. And I'm really enjoying this thing, and it's a lot of fun. But see, I was a real alcoholic. Didn't have any problem with them drugs, so I continued to smoke pot and a few lines of cocaine on special occasions. And, if you go to an AA meeting and they ask for a burning desire and you just snorted a few lines, man, your hand goes up. Whoa, let me tell you how good this sobriety thing is. Oh, I just love being sober. And the guys are looking at you, and the old-timers are shaking their head, and they're like, nothing from the neck up, And I was, well, okay, really, Anyway, they stopped calling on you, and then, I stopped going, and then I had another major crisis. I was stood up on a date, and I did exactly what it said to do in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, unbeknownst to me, because I, first of all, hadn't read that book. I hadn't gotten a sponsor. It was really tough to work any steps if you hadn't done those things. But I'd stepped in an Ayers bar, I had 3 drinks, I met Miss right now, and had a meaningful overnight relationship, and I'm thinking the next day, now I know, and I'm patting myself on the back, and I'm thinking, I only had 3 drinks, I had a great time, now I know. I learned a lot in that treatment thing, got a lot of treatment stuff up here, and I know where the meetings are, and if it ever gets really bad, I'll know where to go. And that's what I did. And I spent the next 3 years of sheer hell fulfilling Chapter 3 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm out there, and I'm drinking and stuff. And like I said, I have something that's progressive and terminal. Remember in the beginning, I was drinking to have fun. Then I was drinking because I had these problems. And then alcoholism took a new turn on me I wasn't ready for. I started getting out there, and I'm partying and whatever else, and I got the conscience of AA in the back. They really do screw up your drinking. And I learned about the hair of the dog in AA and all that stuff, so whenever I was doing that. So next thing you know is I'm out there, and every time I'm showing up to work, there seemed to be short liquor or money. So I ended up getting a job as a service manager, which is in charge of all the inventory work for the liquor and the money and stuff, and we didn't have any more problems. And except one minor detail that I wasn't aware of, and that's like I was junior of the service managers, so I didn't get to pick my schedule as much as I used to. So now I'm back on the morning flights again real early. And the service manager's job is to pour coffee on them china cups and silver trays in first class. And when you've been out partying your night away and dancing until 3, 4 in the morning and still drinking, and you come up the next morning and you've only had a few hours sleep, that booze is shaking its way out of there. And it's good. And you're like this, and you're shaking, and you like some coffee, and you're just rattling and making all this noise, and they're holding their cup out. Yes, over here, please. I'll have a little coffee right there, yeah, right. And I'm like, what's shaking more, me or the plane? And, we're still parked at the gate, and we hadn't even left yet. And so I'd have to have 3 or 4 of them little vodkas just to calm the nerves, to get normal, so I can go back to work, just settle down a little bit. And I didn't know what was what or who was who. You know, in the beginning I was drinking to have fun, then I was drinking to problems. Now I'm drinking because I've been drinking. And now you can get fired for drinking at work. You know, and so now the fear's in there, and I'm drinking at the fear, and I'm drinking at the problems, and I'm trying to squeeze a little fun in there, and drinking became a job. And all of a sudden, it's just like that old Indian adage. The man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. And that's where I was. And I spent the next few years, like I said, just going through hell. And I'm in this fear constantly. And I remember pulling into stations, and I had my uniform on, and I knew the supervisor was back there with the drug testing people right there. When I opened that door, they're going to be there. So I'd run and go change in the bathroom, and I'd change my coat and my tie and walk off with the passengers. And run into the bar and have a drink. So just in case they caught me, I said, oh, no, I'm drinking here now. You know, I already got off work about 15 minutes ago, you know, and I didn't want to get caught drinking, you know, so I tried to sneak around, sneak out the back door and all this stuff. And, you know, I don't know what to tell you except for that, you know, the gig was just about up. You know, all of a sudden I'm going around and I'm in fear and I'm getting called in and you know, this year it's going to be different. And I'm going to these meetings and I'm trying to get sober and I'm going to the meetings and then, you know, I'd meet her, and I said, you want to go have a drink? And, no, well, I'll get sober next week, you know. And I'd get a week, 2 weeks, or 3 days. And I was in and out of this thing for a good, solid 9 months to the year at the end. And I remember going to this one Tuesday night meeting. By now, I'm transferred into St. Louis, Missouri, and that's where I'm living. And I'm going to this meeting in Wentzville on Tuesday nights. And I remember walking in there, this gal looks up, and she goes, do you have a home group? I said, no. She said, would you like this to be your home group? I said, well, sure. She says, when's your sobriety date? I said, today. And she put down her pen and picked up a pencil and wrote it in. This woman had a lot of insight and judgment. And that ain't my sobriety date. And man, I was like, oh, you know, and I was doing this thing. And finally, you know, I'm getting called into the office one more time. And I remember that it was a bright, sunny day out. I'm on the way to work, you know, and I'd built a sandcastle of a life, you know, and the tide was coming in, you know. And all of a sudden, I just said, God, what a great day to get sober. Nobody in AA gets sober on a bright, sunny day, you know. And I turned that car around, and I'm heading back home, and I'm thinking, what a better day to get drunk. And that's what I did. I stopped, picked up another 12-pack on the way home, and I called in sick, and I said, I'm going to go in for treatment to get sober. And these guys, just like 6 in the morning, they're like, I'm glad you called. Where are you? And whatever. What time are you going in today? I said, no, tomorrow. And I went... I said, I'm getting drunk today, sober tomorrow. He said, okay, you drink right up to the door. And I did. And it was just like one more hurrah. You know, I mean, I went out, I got drunk that night, and I really got a chance to I didn't really get drunk. I just kind of was an out-of-body thing, and I can still remember back then, you know. I had been taught, you know, I had this cartoon when I got sober. And here's this guy sitting in this lounge chair with all these beer cans piled up to the wall behind him. The wife's in the kitchen with a cola. She says, yeah, the problem with them AA meetings is they do the same thing day in and day out. Same thing, you know. And I've been doing that. You know, for the last 15 years of my life, I've been talking about what I'd done and what I was going to do. And I did the same thing day in and day out for the next 15 years. You know, I ended up going into treatment there, and I came in probably not too late, whatever, but I'll tell you what, I walked out of that. When I walked in there, I had alcoholic liver hepatitis, bleeding ulcers, and I was yellow from jaundice. That wasn't exactly a vision for you, you know, and all I wanted to do was just go to meetings, you know, because I knew that's where the light was. It's not that I wanted what you had in AA, you know, it was pretty pathetic, really, but I just didn't want what I had any longer. I was willing to go to any lengths at that time. And I remember in my early days, and I was going to meetings, and I really started doing this program through attrition. Not because I'm a saint or somebody who just dove in and, oh, happy, joyous, and free here. I would go to meetings and this, that, and the other, and somebody would be drunk. And they'd come back in, and I'd say, well, what weren't you doing? Did you get a sponsor? And I'd go, no. So I went and got a sponsor. And then a couple weeks later, somebody else is drunk. I said, did you get a sponsor? Yeah. Did you call him? He said, no. So I called mine. And I started doing that, and then I started getting involved in it and stuff. But then I did everything wrong that first year. You know, I started making amends without consulting his sponsor, and I ran into this girl I dated back when, you know, and I said, gotta go make amends here. And so I invited her out again, and she said, yeah, you know, I'm sober now. I'd like to take you out again. Apologize for the lousy time we had last year, but let's try it. Oh, okay, you know, and... Anyway, I ended up proceeding to turn my will and my life over to her as I understand her, believing that she, too, would restore me to sanity. And good news is she lived crawling distance from Chandler Lodge down here in North Hollywood. And so I'd be in there, and I'd go to the meetings, and any visitors from out of town. And now I'm living in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm dating a girl that's here in North Hollywood. So I would fly out here on my regular trips and lay over, and then we'd fly back the next day. And then on my day off, I'd fly back out. And then I'd go back home, work, and come right back. So, I'm going to any visitors from out of town. Hi, I'm Tom. I'll call you. Yeah, Tom St. Louis. Yeah, Tom St. Louis. Put your hand down. You're here more than the regulars. Jesus. Okay, I didn't know there was a rule about it. Anyway, so I'm going to the meetings and stuff, and I'm telling what a wonderful relationship we're in. We're both working on my character defects, and this is getting old real quick. And I don't know, things are going along, and I'm doing all right and whatever, and just going to meetings, doing this, and I'm catching them on the road a lot of times. And then I had a major crisis come up, sober. I'm about a year and a half sober now, and on Monday we went on strike at TWA in 1984 or 85, and I'd lost the job I'd had for 10 years or whatever. And then on Wednesday I got a letter from the IRS owing a lot of money, and $2,800. And on Friday she threw me out. She didn't want this bum around, and so I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm going to the picket line, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm going to this, and I'm pulling my hair out, and people are telling me, hey Tom, getting hungry, find a job, jerk, and I'm going, I got one, they just don't let me go no more, And all of a sudden they called the strike off, and I'd been replaced, and I'm like, whoa. And people are telling me, hey, Tom, why don't you get a job with Harry Greger's Construction on the corner here? Or, hey, why don't you go over to the Sportsman's Lodge? They're looking for waiters down there. I said, oh, okay, you waited in the air, you can wait on the ground. I'm not hearing any of this. So that Friday I got 2 jobs, one with Harry, one at the thing. So I'm working now from 6 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock at night waiting tables, and from 10 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning I'm running red ironed up 3 flights of stairs at the Beverly Center. We're doing a tenant improvement for some bath and linen store. So I'm running this stuff, and my 30-year-old ego ain't going to let no 22-year-olds outdo me, so we're racing, And all of a sudden the guy's going, hey, we're done real early. We got done, and they said, hey, this is great. You guys can all head on home. Tom, why don't you stick around and help these carpenters out, And I ended up launching off in a new career. And I showed up there, and I did what I was told, And next thing you know, the guy's on vacation and made me assistant superintendent, And then I'm working on another one. I went to another company as their assistant superintendent guy. And one of the carpenters on that job grabbed me by the shirt collar and dragged me over and says, how much they paying you? And I said, at that time, $10 an hour. And I was real proud. I just gotten a raise and everything. He goes, you deserve a decent living. And the guy dragged me down to the union over here in Winnetka and signed me up as a journeyman carpenter. And I'm going, hey, but I don't know what I'm doing. Do they have an apprenticeship thing or something? He goes, shut up, you're too old for that shit. What? And he goes, hey, just show up, do exactly what they tell you. Here, read this book and call me if you got any questions. And I go, all right, just so you show up, read the book, call your spot. Do you know Bill W.? He said, who? I said, never mind. And that little glimmering brain cell I hadn't fried yet came flickering on and said, practice these principles in all your affairs. And I went, so I did that. And I showed up with enthusiasm, and I did what I was told. It was amazing in construction. You show up and do it the way they tell you to do it, when they tell you to do it, they think you're a genius. He goes, by the way, if they ask you if you know how to do something, you don't know how to do it, tell them, yeah, I know several different ways. You show me the way you want it done, I'll do it that way. We don't have any problems. And I said, okay, that sounds cool. So he goes, by the way, you're going to get on this job. You're going to last a couple days, maybe a day. They're going to fire you, but they'll call it a layoff. Then a week later, you're going to go to another job, and they're going to work you a couple days. They're going to fire you, but they're going to call it a layoff because you don't know nothing. And then in the meantime, then you'll last a little longer. By the end of the year, you'll have experience. So I go on the first job the last 2 weeks, and they laid me off. They fired me, but they called it a layoff. And next job, I show up, and I'm in the interview and thing there, and I'm filling out the application, and some guy comes running, hey, man, our welder didn't show up today. Superintendent looks up, either you guys know how to weld? I looked at him, he looked at me, he said, no. I said, yeah. And he goes, there's your welder. And I said, oh, okay, great. And we hop in. I said, by the way, it's been a long time since I've done any welding. And I'm thinking, this lifetime? But I know several different ways. If you show me the way you want it done, and I'll do it that way, we won't have any problems. And he goes, oh, no problem. He says, we're not doing any fancy beads or nothing. We're just tacking a chamfer strip up. And I'm thinking, beads, tacks, and I'm getting visuals of nothing. You know what I mean? I was like, And so the guy takes me out there, and he flips his hood down, and he goes, and don't worry, folks, there's nothing structural, and no buildings are going to fall down. There's just a little thing they were pouring concrete to. So I'm putting this chamfer strip, and he's tacking it on there. He says, see, it's not bad. And I said, okay. So he takes off, and I'm looking over one shoulder and next, and I put that hood down, I go, and it sticks. And I think I'm getting electrocuted, and I'm like, I'm breaking this thing, man. By the end of that day, man, I'm doing fancy beads and everything, I got that thing going. And I tell you what, man, I was in so much fear every day. And I'm going, my God, you're either out there with me or I'm screwed, And you know what? This is really the best part here. I show up for 2 weeks, right, and I'm their welder and this other stuff. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm supposed to get fired here pretty quick. And they made me a foreman. And go figure. I go, but I don't know what I'm doing. And they just laugh. He's so funny. I'm serious. And anyway, so they made me a foreman, and they put me in charge of putting this thing together. It was like one of the biggest erector sets you could ever get as a kid, And I put this stuff together. We're building flood control channels down in Orange County. It was great, and I had a good time with it. But I got to tell you, I just showed up, and I went to meetings, and I practiced these principles out there, and then I started doing it. And it launched me on a new career, And I just suit up and show up. And I got to tell you what, looking back on that week, it was the worst week of my life. She left me, da-da-da-da, and I could do a whole talk on that relationship thing. She'd throw me in and out, and I'll touch on it in a minute here. And we'd break up, and then we'd make up, and then we're back together. And I'm moving back and forth between Orange County and North Hollywood, which week. And I had a sponsor I had to let go. My life was way too painful for him, and I was killing him. He's like, you're supposed to call me. When she says get out and she's called the cops, I ain't going to say no. I got to call my sponsor. I ain't leaving anywhere. No, he's not home, but I ain't leaving until I call my sponsor. No, I'm out of there. I ain't going to wait. And so I'm going, this guy's crazy. He just had too much trouble with that. And I think he meant when I was going to move back in that he wanted to hear from me. But I thought, and so anyway, I'm going through this thing, and it just dawned on me, she's throwing me out, I'm coming back. She's throwing me out, and she just dawned on me, she's just pulling the strings. You're looking at the yo-yo, And we would do the same things over. It's like going down to Mexico, and you try to speak English, and they say, lo siento, no hablo inglés. You go, and what do? We raise our voice. Hey, can you tell me where the train is? And they're going, they're not deaf. They don't understand English. And so we would do this in our relationship, right? We'd get back, we'd break up, and this time we'd get that gleam in our eye and that love in our heart, and this time we're going to try harder. We did the same things we broke up over last time, but more intensely. What I had to do is I had to put her in those steps. I had to sit there and say, hey, God, I'm powerless over this woman who's making my life unmanageable. And I came to believe that God would restore me to sanity in this matter. And the next 2 weeks, when we got that gleam in our eye and I love in our heart, we had to sit there and say, no thanks, God bless it. That's it, And I finally got free of that, And looking back on it, I was telling you, that all of a sudden I went from being around Alcoholics Anonymous to in it. I ended up getting another sponsor, this guy, Ron C. He lives up in Ventura now, and Ron was a great guy. He was what I call a commitment sponsor. A commitment sponsor does is he runs around and volunteers you for everything that opens up in AA. Next thing you know, I'm secretary of the 6 o'clock meetings at Chandler. I'm on the convention committee. I'm pouring coffee over here. I'm cleaning up over Radford. And all of a sudden, my dance card is full. And I can tell you that I'm running around doing all this stuff, and my life is great, and it was just wonderful. And I was able to get into this program rather than just being on the peripherals of it. And I just had an awesome time. And you know what? They ended up putting me on a H&I commitment. It wasn't a technical H&I. It was Friends of Warm Springs. And we go up here just north of here, not too far, and we carry a message in there. And I had the second Sunday of the month. And I did that for 7 years here. I didn't know you could quit. But I guess I was just waiting for it to work, And I can tell you, today, I've just passed 20 years not too long ago. And what I do today is I am on a convention committee. I got a commitment to a place called Indian Springs, a little more intense than Warm Springs. It's a prison. And I remember that. It was like I have a meeting on Friday nights, and I got a commitment there, and this, that, and the other. And one of the guys goes, hey, you want a commitment to Indian Springs? I said, no. When do I start? This is my home group, Friday night. You're pulling me out of here once a month, and I'm doing this thing. Well, long story short, I'm thinking, so I get a couple guys to go with me, and I'm real nervous. I've never been to prison. I mean, what do they want from some candy-ass ex-stewardess, And I'm going, well, hey, yeah, maybe. I don't know. And I asked this guy and this person and that person, none of them can make it, So I'm walking into the yard the first day on my own. I'm, God, you're either with me or I'm literally screwed here. And I'm kind of a little shuffle going there. And I'm walking in and I'm thinking, okay, just look down, don't stare them in the eyes. You heard all this stuff. And all of a sudden they ring the dinner bell or something. Now I got to walk through 200 guys. And I'm like, oh, hi. And I get in the meeting and I start telling this story about walking in here. I'm scared to death. And they all busted up laughing. I got to tell you, today something happened and another guy got a commitment. He's going to do Tuesday night book study in prison. He breaks his foot. Now I got to push him into prison every Tuesday night. And so for the last year and a half, I don't have to push him anymore, but I got a commitment. We take a book study into the prison. It's funny because it's not technically an AA. I mean, it's not an H&I commitment because up at where I live, I guess the H&I doesn't take book studies into prison. They're just doing panels. I said, oh, that's nice. So we're just a regular group. I'm an outside member of the Inside Straights now, and we have a meeting every Tuesday night. You got to get cleared before you can come, but it's a wonderful meeting, and I got to tell you, it's the highlight of my week. I can have all sorts of stuff going on during the week, and I go up to prison, and I start going, do you guys want to hear some whining? They're not really, my problems are not really on their list of to-dos that day, and it puts me back to reality. It really does bring me down to earth. When I start thinking about all my problems during the week, and I go up to prison, I can use the restroom when I want. It's got a toilet seat. It's kind of cool, I can eat when I want and a few other things. And I come up back from that, and I'm just like, what was bothering me today? Damn, yeah. And I got to tell you that the whole thing, when I went from that around there, and I'm going to Chandler, and I'm single, and I'm doing this stuff, and I keep asking this girl out to coffee, and she says, no thanks, and this, that, and the other. And finally, she just looked at me one day and said, I'm too old for you. And I said, well, you got a younger sister? And she said, yeah, matter of fact, I do. And she wasn't sober yet, but she's right here. This is my bride. And Lori got sober a few months later or whatever, and we started dating, and we've been together pretty much ever since. And we've been together over 16 years, and we've been married over 12. And it's just an awesome life. And Lori's just the light of my life. Her and my little girl, Harmony, and you don't get from where I was to where I'm at today. The relationship thing is, my idea of a long-term relationship, Ralph, I hate to tell you, was both Friday and Saturday night. And, today, it's, we've been together for a long time together. And, when I got married, I got married. When I was single, I was single. And, I got to tell you, it's just the greatest thing. We have a life that revolves around Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want to tell you, if you're new out there, life is not problem-free. We didn't skip and jump the happy road of destiny here together, But I got to tell you what, we do a lot of AA service, and that's coming. We spend a lot of time passing in the day and the night and whatever. Hey, how you doing? Good. I got to go. But, phone rings. We go out and we do 12-step stuff. And she has a meeting in the house. We had 2 meetings in our house, one on Monday nights and one on Wednesday. And I got voted out, so we only have one on Wednesday now. And well, what's mine is hers, and what's hers is hers, and anyway, so it's just a real neat life. And what we do is we keep Alcoholics Anonymous number one. Once in a while, we start still suffering from that delusion that we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of life if we just manage well. You know that part in the book. I'm going to control it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to wear nice suits and do this, and we're going to do this stuff. And I start really if I just work harder, I can get all that stuff. And I'm going to start doing it. And then it all falls on the floor. And I go dragging myself back into doing this. I got to tell you, I've tried several careers since I've been sober. I have tried being a real estate agent. And I did real good selling new homes, and then I was going to do real estate on the outside, and I just flop at it. I'm just not organized enough attention. My wife is extremely good at it. She is fabulous at it. Me, I seem to keep falling back and picking up that hammer and swinging a hammer for a living, and I'm a good carpenter. I'm really a good carpenter, and so I went out and got my construction I got a contractor's license. I had a friend say, if you want to be miserable, get a contractor's license. So I went out and got a contractor's license. And not enough, things were too tranquil or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's been ups and downs with that. One year I didn't hardly make a dime, and it was terrible. And so I went back and I'm swinging a hammer. And I remember one time I just had all this stuff, and I was going to have to go back to being a carpenter, because we were broke and we needed money to eat and pay the bills and all this. And I went down to Detox, which is a little thing where these newcomers, and I started sharing about how much of a failure I felt like. I felt like a loser, I tried this stuff, and I just didn't make that $1 million that I wanted. I didn't make anything near that. And I'm sharing it down there with these people that are just now sober 3 days, and I had to fall back on that career that pays $20 an hour. And now one of them had any sympathy for me, and it reminds me where I have to be. I do Alcoholics Anonymous first. The rest of it's all icing. We have a new employer who talks about it. I just got to get out there and stir it up. We were talking about this with people recently, that it's not about making decisions. The decisions are really meaningless, because if God doesn't want you to do it, it ain't going to happen anyway. So just go for it. What is important is that you make the decision. The worst decision you can ever make in your life is indecision. I'm going to wait for the right job. I know a guy still waiting. It's 5 years later. He's waiting for the right career opportunity. It's a matter of just get out there and stir it up. I think God's going to lay that track out for you. I have had a wonderful time in this life, and I just really enjoy a lot of the things here. I remember getting back we got involved. We moved up here. Lori and I moved in together. We moved up to Rafters up here. We were going to meetings there and stuff, and then the earthquake hit and we moved off there. But when we got married, it was kind of a little turbulent time. When we got engaged or whatever, before that, when we started dating, her little daughter come down and plopped down and sat right between us and kind of glared at me, taking her mama away. And 4 years later, when we got married, here she is at the wedding, crying and sobbing. Those were not tears of joy. She lost the battle. And this little angel went from a straight A student at 10, 11, 12 to straight Fs. And now she's doing drugs and drinking and doing all this stuff. And our other roommate's going, hey, this gal's loaded. And we're like, oh, no, she's just going through a phase. So anyway, she ends up spending her 15th birthday in a detox. Mom's in the hospital having a little work done, and she's in a detox, and God knows where the sun is. And we're running around, and I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm taking a birthday banana, running over here, doing all this stuff, And it was an absolutely insane time. And when she got out of there, Harmony didn't know she couldn't hang in school anymore. She ended up dropping out of school because she couldn't hang with the loadies there, and she didn't like the nerds, and so she ended up dropping out and stuff. But she did Alcoholics Anonymous up here at the Rafters. And then we moved to Las Vegas after the year. After the earthquake back here in Northridge, we moved to Las Vegas. I couldn't get to work any longer. And we ended up doing that, and she tried a little school again, couldn't hang with that again, dropped back out, and started getting self-supporting. She ended up going to, getting a job here in at Buffalo Exchange, and she ends up at this coffee shop across the street from UNLV campus there. And she's, got all those teachers coming through and cops and all these people coming in for coffee every morning and whatever, and she falls in love with this little Georgia Peach who's going to school there. And anyway, they talk her into going back to school and getting a GED, and she does that. She gets one of the highest grades they've ever had in the state. It's not too hard. I think the total IQ in Pahrumph's like 3. But anyway, she ends up doing this, and she does real good, so she moves off to Georgia, and she goes back there, and she starts there, and she goes to community college. She gets on to Georgia State, and she's been carrying like a 3.85 and a 3.8 this last couple of years. She's just doing awesome, and she just recently got accepted to this thing through a bunch of her connections, but she's got to put the application in, but she got accepted to a doctorate program. It's almost a sure in if she just fills out the form, so she'll probably be doing that. And it's awesome because they end up getting engaged, her and this guy. Now, they've broken it off since then, but when she got engaged, she came up and asked me to walk her down the aisle. And you just can't get from where we were to where we're at today. And it's really one of the highlights of my life. She's my little shining star. She's just an awesome little girl. And we do lots of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do lots of fun things in AA. We do a lot of conventions. We took up sober sailing the other year, last year. We ended up all going on this trip down through the Caribbean, and we had 300 ex-drunks all on this boat. Thank God we were sober. I would have wanted to drive. We were doing this thing, and just being a love and service and helping out and stuff like that. And being the ex-stewardess, I'm handling the bags and helping everybody, running with a little flag and stuff. And we got a call about 6 months later. They said, "Hey, Tom, we're going on the cruise again. You want to come? We'll pay." I said, "Okay, cool." And we're going to go do that tomorrow. We're leaving tonight, actually. We're going to head on the cruise again. I'm 50 years old, and I took up scuba diving last year. Anything worth doing is worth doing to abuse. Got certified open water. We hit the Caribbean and went scuba diving in all those places. I just love it, right? So I get back, sign up for every course. Working on my instructors now. Got over 60 dives in. I've been going to the coast here and out there and everywhere I can, and I just loving it. I'm being a lot of service and showing up and being a service and helping out the people at the dive shop, and they've kind of taken me under their wing and are teaching me everything I need to know, and I'll be able to pass that on one of the cruises sometime, or when we go to Hawaii or whatever, be able to take people and teach them that, because it's all about being of love and service. We all know what love is, and we all know what service is. A lot of people like to think this thing is, psychotherapy and your inner child. This isn't look out for number one or overeaters or little Peters or whatever. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. And the problem and the root of the problem is selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, and the solution is constant thought of others. We read a part in the book with Bill's story in the very beginning. It's a problem, it's a solution that works in hard times. It's a program for living. When the going gets tough, you work with another alcoholic. It's throughout the book, it talks about this 12-step, helping others, being a maximum service to God and the people about you. We have people who think it's just about doing a thorough inventory and getting one with nature and God, and it's you and them. Man, you put me in a room with God and a big book and Fifth of Jack. It's me and Jack. It's about taking what you learn in here, doing those steps, making the amends, and then being a service out there, helping the new people find the way. That's what it is. In my life, the more I think about me and try to manage and control my life, it just seems to fall apart. I get restless, irritable, and discontent. It's like me I can tell you when I'm doing God's will and my will. When I hop on the freeway in the morning, I change lanes 19 times in 2 miles, and I'm 4 cars behind the guy I started behind. That's how I manage my life. If I just pull over and get in the fast lane and go, my life's pretty good, But, man, I walk in wound up like a knight. I can get that. I like to practice Rule 62. I don't like to take myself too damn serious. But I got to tell you, some days I try to get just a little more. We all talk about that. We suffer from more. We don't want much, just a little more, I got to start. My dad taught me stuff years ago that I'd probably be a very wealthy man today if I'd ever listened to him. He's talked about postponement of gratification and moderation and balance. Never heard of it. He said, you should be putting 10% of your salary away. He told me that at 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. He told me the other year. This 50 I hit this year. My wife and I had our 50th birthdays for 3 days apart. I'm an older man. And so we had a 100-year party. And you know what? I still suffer from things in sobriety. And I got to tell you, if you're sponsoring people or if you're new out there and you're kind of uncomfortable, check your debts. There is a direct correlation to debt and serenity. You got a couple grand in the bank, all the bills are paid off, you're living within your means, things are pretty good. Charge it. Can't afford it, get more, I'm thinking, if they give credit, take 4. Oh my God. And I have had great credit in sobriety, and I've had terrible. Got it back up to great credit again? Terrible. I'm in the middle of getting great again. That means I just went through terrible. I have discovered that I'm a 50-year-old big kid who wants what he wants when he wants it. I want it now, and I want more, and I want the best one. I don't want that one. I want the good one. I want the professional one. I don't want that amateur-looking little starter thing. I want the, whatever I do. I go out and buy. If I went skiing again, I would want the downhill competition skis. I don't want none of these little beginner. I got to have the $7,000 outfit, the whole 9 things. I just That's just the way I've always been. Cars, I'm getting better at cars. So I got the truck with a V6 and a stick and no frills. It's a work truck, you know. But, you know, the one I wanted was the V10. 4 doors, monster truck. You know, I want it to look like Bigfoot coming down the freeway. Then they can just get out of my way, you know, or if I run over them, they don't like it. But I got the smaller truck, you know, and it works great, you know. I'm learning slowly. I got to tell you about some other stuff. The one thing I want to do when I come into Alcoholics Anonymous is transparent as possible. I have had a little bit of too much control lately, and I'm turning into a flake. I'm telling people I'm going to do stuff, and I haven't been able to do it. And I owe some ends now. And I owe some ends because I got to give money back for stuff I've been doing or finish what I told them I was going to do. And the first thing I did is last night, we had this vacation we're taking off on, and I had promised the guy I was going to do something. So I stayed up late last night doing it, and I was up at 4 o'clock this morning finishing it, and I delivered it. And I got to go back and fix some of it when I get back. But, you know, I don't like to be that kind of guy. I heard a guy in a meeting say one time, the spiritual you're ever going to do is doing what you say you're going to do when you said you were going to do it. Gosh, it's a pretty simple program here, folks, you know. But what I like to do is, you know, I found that these people out there, they're not judging me on my intentions. I intended to be there, but they're judging me on my actions. You know, I'm a good guy. Yeah, well, just be here. We don't care what you're like. Just show up, you know. And that's true in the area. You know, you get sober here. If you're new, you know, one of the most valuable commodities we got in Las Vegas is a sober, clean mind. They drug test everybody out there. You know, suiting up, on time, showing up. I remember when I was brand new, I used to love to just fly into work, show up a half hour early, have my cup of coffee, and watch all the alkies come running in with their eyes falling out, you know. Shaking away, you know. And today, you know, I found that that's one of the best things you can do is just show up early, give them what they're supposed to get, do what you're supposed to do, you know, and give them a good day's pay. You know, give them an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And you do that, I'll tell you what, you're going to go places. The number one reason people get fired in Las Vegas is no call, no show, they call it. They don't show up and they don't even bother to pick up the phone. You know, and that's termination, first thing. You know, I've done real well in construction and a lot of other things because I was there. A lot of the other guys were a lot better than me, but they weren't there that day, so they missed out on the opportunity. If you shoot up and show up here in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to get what we got. If you do what we do the way we did it, your life is going to get better. I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I wanted to get on to a few things. But, you know, I've pretty much got most of my story covered here. But there's a couple of things my sponsor likes me to talk about, and I try to get him in every day. You know, one of the things I learned on that commitment is one of the best things that lightened up my life was getting involved and being of service. And one of the things I love absolutely was, you know, when I came in here, he wanted to talk about some of the God thing stuff. And, man, I had this big problem with this God thing, you know. And I'm walking up, so I went to this guy and said, you know, I got a problem with this God thing. And he looks at me and says, you think you're having a problem with God? You should see the problem he's having with you. And he walked off. And I'm thinking, you know, and I was about a couple years sober to having these problems, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I went home and I love them science fiction movies. So I picked up Star Wars one more time, plopped it in the VCR, and I'm looking at this thing, and me and Luke, we're going after the battle stars, and we're shooting them up and all this stuff, and we're going at it, and it said, let go, Luke, and use the Force. I said, my God, that's this program. You know, today I believe there's the positive and negative forces acting in this universe, and you have a choice on a daily basis what you want to plug into. You can plug into the positive side of the Force, which is the loving and caring for other human beings and putting the needs of another ahead of your own. Or you can plug into the dark side of the Force, which is the selfishness, self-centeredness, and self-seeking of this program. That'll drive you right into the abyss, you know. And I found that, you know, I truly believe once you do that, it'll unlock the keys of the kingdom around here. You start walking around and you're feeling a little better about yourself because you did something worthwhile. They told me, you want to get some self-worth? Do something worthwhile. Whoa, I'd rather kind of think my way into this one, you know. I just got a pill for that? Oh. And, you know, so I went out and I started doing this thing. And once again, I was doing this trip, you know, I had this thing that I was doing for a long time, and that was that commitment up to Warm Springs. And I was cruising along here one time, and it was really great because I'm hauling along Highway 5 over here. Back then, the speed limit was 55. And we're cruising along, and I'm doing my 75 on it. And I'm listening to the mellow songs, you know, the old fart stuff, you know, the Coast 103, the mellow songs along the coast. And we're tuning along, and all of a sudden this ad came on for a new ride they put in here at Magic Mountain. And the ad went something like this. Ninja, The black belt of roller coasters. You can't see the track. You don't know when the next turn's coming. You never know when they'll throw a loop in there. I said, my God, that's his program. You know, you hop on this thing called sobriety and you're going uphill and you're feeling good. Of course you are. You're getting your health back. You're getting a few bucks in your left pocket. You're not shoving it up your right nostril, you know. And you're going along and all of a sudden she sits down and you go, my God, what a spiritual program indeed. I just love sobriety. You know, and some old fart taps you on the shoulder like Jim over here and he says, read the book. And you go, shut up back there. I got a good program. Check it out, you know. And all of a sudden it goes, and it's going downhill faster and faster. He said, what's going on? He said, work the steps. Shut up, man. And you go along, and all of a sudden it went right, and she went left, felt like she just tore your heart out. And you're going, what's going on? He said, read the book. You go, I lost it on the last turn. But just hang in there. Then all of a sudden there goes a loop, and there goes your job out the window. Don't drink and don't get off because the line got longer and the price of the ticket with him. Just hang in here, you know. Just hang in there. And all of a sudden it'll go along, and then eventually you're going to get like the rest of it. See, this book is how you get comfortable not drinking and using. It ain't going to stop the twists and turns. There goes another loop, and you finally are with the rest of them. Here we go again. Screw it, you know. There goes another job out the window. But just hang in there. Eventually it's going to level out, and it's going to go back uphill again. You know, it'll level off finally. And all of a sudden somebody's going to sit down in front of you, and you know what you're going to do? You're going to tap 'em on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, read the book and work the steps. Thanks for letting me share, everyone.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.